itself in harm's way, and we've already lost 6 service members, pointed towards a completely unclear objective. The administration has not been able to say with any clarity whatsoever what the ultimate goal of this war is. And in fact, they've given perhaps a dozen different explanations, shifting by the hour, by the day. And here, a week into the war, to have that level of muddiness, that muddle, I think is a huge challenge, because it suggests that this war got launched without being fully thought through, and that the end of this war is something that we have no kind of core concept as to what it will bring or how the president will ultimately come out and say, okay, I'm done, I'm moving on. And that leaves us in an extremely precarious position.
Did you just hear that? That was not a political commentator. That was not a pundit. That was the man who sat in the Situation Room as America's national security advisor. And he just told you on camera that our troops are dying with no clear goal.
Regime change by jazz improvisation. That is how the respected scholar of Iran, Karim Sajdapur, described the Trump administration's strategy in the war it has initiated with Iran. Sadly, it's the most accurate description of the scattered, shifting, and uncertain approach that emanates from Washington these days. The president launched this war exhorting the Iranian people to overthrow their government.
It will be yours to take.
Perhaps he had assumed that the regime would collapse instantly. But when it didn't, in a day or two, he changed course. He began musing about dealing with potential leaders within the regime and praising the U.S. intervention in Venezuela as the model to be followed. Perfect, quote unquote. Precisely because far from regime change, it only involved the arrest of 2 people. Pete Hegseth specifically denied that this was a regime change war, as did his senior aide Abrish Kobi. Both said the goal was merely to degrade Iran's military forces, many of which had been, quote-unquote, obliterated last June in a 12-day bombing attack that included the use of stealth bombers. But then in a new twist, Trump reached out to Kurdish leaders in Iran and Iraq, promising them support if they would join the fight, presumably not to degrade Iran's military power, but to topple the government in Tehran, maybe even change Iran's borders. This weekend, however, the president backpedaled on this plan. Trump has also now proclaimed that there won't be a deal without unconditional surrender from Iran. So the goal isn't regime change, except
7 Americans are now dead. Gas prices jumped 43 cents in 1 week. Oil is over $110 a barrel. And the president cannot tell you what winning this war even looks like. Stay right here, because by the end of this video, you will understand exactly what is happening, who benefits, and why you are the one paying for it. Regime change by jazz improvisation. Let that sink in. That phrase was coined by Karim Sajdapur, one of America's most respected Iran scholars at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. It is not partisan opinion. It is an expert's clinical diagnosis.
Turns out the regime who chanted
Here is what they are not
death
telling
to America
you on cable news in a
death
clean
to Israel
headline. This administration launched a
death
war,
from America
a real shooting war without a
Israel.
defined objective.
This
they
is
have
not
publicly
a
offered
so-called
more than a
regime change
dozen
war.
different goals. That
But
is
the
not
regime
leadership. That is chaos.
Sure did change.
I want you to hear what Fareed just said very carefully, because this is the part that almost nobody is talking about. Benjamin Netanyahu went on video and admitted this war was, his words, the culmination of a 40-year-old dream. His words, not an allegation, not spin. He said it. Mondo Weiss reported that after the strikes began, Netanyahu told a reporter he had fulfilled his dream to bomb Iran thanks to Trump. And the Times of Israel confirmed both the U.S. and Israel privately want regime change. They just won't say it publicly. Here is what this means for you. Israel's goal is to destroy the Iranian government, period.
Turns out the regime who chanted death to America
the Wall Street Journal.
and death to Israel
is methodically destroying Iran's
death
police state
from America
to make it right for
and death
collapse.
actor is improvising like a saxophone player. It is that the 2 countries waging the war have separate and perhaps incompatible agendas. For Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the war is clearly about destroying the Islamic Republic. In a video he released, he acknowledged that this war was the culmination of a 40-year-old dream. Israel's military strategy has been focused, brilliantly implemented, and aligned with their goal. The Israeli strikes are decapitating Iran's leadership, destroying its military forces, striking its leadership compounds, even hitting police facilities. It is, as the Wall Street Journal reported, methodically destroying Iran's police state, leaving the regime ripe for a collapse. And on the current trajectory, Israel might well succeed in its objective. And that will likely result in a power vacuum in the country, which could invite revolt, but will almost certainly result in a civil war. Keep in mind, whoever may seek power,
America's goal, at least officially, is a defanged Iran, not a destroyed Iran. These are not the same thing. And when those two goals collide, as they are right now, the country left holding the bag will be the United States of America, just like Iraq, just like Libya, just like every time we knocked over a government without a plan for what came next. This is not opinion. This is recorded history.
Actor is improvising like a saxophone player. It is that the two countries waging the war have separate and perhaps incompatible agendas. For Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the war is clearly about destroying the Islamic Republic. In a video he released, he acknowledged that this war was the culmination of a 40-year-old dream. Israel's military strategy has been focused, brilliantly implemented, and aligned with their goal. The Israeli strikes are decapitating Iran's leadership, destroying its military forces, striking its leadership compounds, even hitting police facilities. It is, as the Wall Street Journal reported, methodically destroying Iran's police state, leaving the regime ripe for a collapse. And on the current trajectory, Israel might well succeed in its objective. And that will likely result in a power vacuum in the country, which could invite revolt, but will almost certainly result in a civil war. Keep in mind, whoever may seek power,
into the day that have provided our leadership, we're pairing with this. Look at that number. The national average for gas hit $3.41, up 43 cents in 1 week. That is not a statistic. That is money out of your wallet. Energy expert Daniel Yergin told the Financial Times, this is the single largest disruption in oil production in recorded history. Oil is now over $110 a barrel, and the Trump administration says the prices will drop, quote, before too long. They said the same thing about the war goals. Jake Sullivan said it plainly. If you launch an existential war, expect an existential response. 7 Americans are dead. Gas is spiking. The world's oil supply is in the worst disruption in recorded history. And we still do not have a clear answer to the most basic question of war. What does winning look like? Israel knows what it wants. It has wanted it for 40 years. Netanyahu said so himself.
World and on the United States. Why? With a goal to try to hasten the end of this war. Because the sooner this war ends, from their perspective, the better in terms of their ability to survive and to reconsolidate power. So at the moment, this is basically a race between the U.S. trying to impose, and Israel trying to impose as much damage as possible. And I thought your opening comments were spot on in what Israel's trying to achieve here. And the Iranian regime trying to raise the price and the costs as high as possible. And who's suffering? The world is. The American people are. Gas prices, for example, have jumped dramatically just in the last week and promised to go even higher. And this is all part of the strategy of a much weaker opponent playing the hand that they have. And that is something that the administration should have anticipated coming into it.
Yes, it seems to me if you launch a kind of...
But America, your America, has been dragged into this war with jazz improvisation instead of strategy. The Washington Post wrote plainly, an Iranian civil war is not in America's interests. Our Arab allies depend on a stable Middle East for oil, trade, and peace. And a collapsed Iran could become the next Libya, still fractured, still burning, 14 years after Gaddafi fell. This is not about being for or against military action. This is about demanding, as citizens, as taxpayers, as parents and grandparents, that when we send our sons and daughters into harm's way, someone in Washington has a real plan, not a dozen shifting ones. You deserve the truth. Your gas prices, your retirement accounts, and your grandchildren's future depend on it. And right now, the people running this war cannot tell you what they are trying to accomplish. That should outrage every single American, regardless of party. Thank you for watching.
The administration has not been able to say with any clarity whatsoever what the ultimate goal of this war is. And in fact, they've given perhaps a dozen different explanations, shifting by the hour.
Perfectly when I was keeping about the look at this. In just 10 days, the stated goal of this war changed 5 times. Day 1, the Iranian people should revolt. Day 2, this is not regime change. Day 3, let's arm the Kurds. Day 5, never mind the Kurds. Day 7, unconditional surrender. Our allies in the Middle East are watching this. Our enemies are watching this. And they are all drawing the same conclusion.